Unfortunately, when we developed holistic planned grazing and management, we had no way of making people stick to those principles. So now it's becoming all things to all people.
Today we continue with part 3 and the final part of my conversation with Allan Savory. It's a deeper dive into what holistic management really looks like and, more importantly, what it isn't. If it crosses your mind about creating a future or legacy for your family or ranch operation, you're going to find our conversation extremely valuable. Also, does holistic management work with the principle of running your ranch like a business? It's part 3 of my conversation with Allan, and it's absolutely packed with pearls of wisdom.
Your integrity, are they degrees of honesty? Or is it like pregnancy? Can you be a little bit pregnant?
So tune in for part 3 and the final part of my conversation with Allan Savory on this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. And we welcome you here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our program here today as we wrap up our final parts of our conversation with Allan Savory, and it just keeps getting better. I really enjoyed the opportunity to visit with him. Of course, he will be one of the featured speakers, or guests, I should say, via Zoom for the upcoming Society for Range Management. They're going to be having their annual meeting in Spokane, Washington this year, and part of the Producers Forum that is associated with that. The 2025 Producers Forum is going to be on February 10th. Now, the whole annual meeting for the Society for Range Management is going to be the 9th through the 13th. And I know at this late in time, if you're not able to go, there are ways that you can still participate in that convention and that conference by going to their website, which is rangelands.org. There are ways that you can follow along through that conference this year remotely, so you can take in all of the different speakers that will be there in the different sessions as well. So check that out for yourself, and appreciate Dave Voth with the Good Grazing Makes Sense initiative for helping to set up this interview that we had with Allan Savory. We'll get to that in just a few moments, but I did want to clue you in. Coming up next week on the program, Clint Berry will be joining us. And yeah, the USDA's released some numbers here recently. Of course, Cattle Facts has also released their projections as well for this coming year and the few years following that. So we're going to be talking with Clint Berry and kind of analyzing all of that from that perspective as well. So be sure to tune in on next week's program. Later on in the show here today, the Captain Tim O'Byrne will be in for this week's edition of Tim's Two Cents, and we'll hear from meteorologist Don Day on that long-term weather. And unfortunately, as we look into this next week, it's not necessarily looking any better, but he'll share with us about what that's going to look like and where the bright spots coming down the road as well. So be sure to tune in later for that. And Dan Leo with Safety Zone Calf Catchers will join us later on in the program. A very fascinating product that is available in the market. It's been around for quite some time, but if you haven't heard about it, it's a mechanism that can attach to your four-wheeler or your side-by-side that allows you to work your calf, get everything done on the calf. He's going to be in to share with us about how that apparatus works, so be sure to tune in later on in the show for that. Well, as we turn towards our featured speaker here today, of course, it's wrapping up our conversation that we recently had with Allan Savory. Now, I don't know if you had the opportunity to go back and listen to parts 1 and part 2 of that conversation. It was in the previous 2 episodes. If you didn't, please do that. I think it'll also set a little bit into context more of our conversation that we have today with Allan. However, each in its own is standalone and has a great message and a great conversation that we have with Allan. Of course, his name is synonymous with that of holistic management, but beyond that, I think it sets the tone and where he's coming from and why he believes that livestock must be a part of the solution for what he considers to be a crisis in the globe, and that is desertification. So I think you get that tone when you listen to the previous 2 episodes. Today, though, we focus a lot more in looking at the depths of holistic management, and I think you're going to be surprised on some of the things and responses that you hear from Allan regarding that, and maybe not lining up exactly with what we hear in the industry in what some say holistic management is, or what they claim to be doing that is considered under the umbrella of holistic management. But nevertheless, we're going to jump into our conversation with Allan now as we get into the details and technicalities of what holistic management really would look like.
Now, when you asked me to go through and briefly explain it, let me say this way. This is 100% management. It's totally new. Now, the more I explain it, the more I will cause confusion.
Okay.
If you and every listener had never known of a bicycle, they've never existed, and I had developed a bicycle, and you were asking me to describe to the listeners a bicycle, I'd be describing something on two narrow tires with some pedals that accelerate the back wheel, a handlebar. You balance this damn thing, and the faster you go, the better it balances. You'd all be saying bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. All right? If I explain holistic management, you'll be doing the same.
Okay.
So will the listeners. All right? So the best way is just do it. So if I could work with a ranch family tomorrow, after all I've learned these years, I would like not to explain it. Just sit with the family. And let's say it was you and your family.
Okay.
I would just sit with you and say, Justin, what are you managing here? You're managing your family. It's your wife and kids and your dog and blah, blah, blah. Okay, and you've got to manage your economy. What are your sources of money? Only what I can earn from the ranch. Or I've got royalties from the book I wrote as well. Okay, so you've got limited sources of money or borrowed capital. Okay, so now you're managing your land. You own this land, yes, and I lease a big chunk from BLM or whatever. Okay, so that's what you're managing, your family, your economy, and your land. And now I would say to you, all right, let's just start with where and how do you and your family want your life to be. And I would get you to discuss that in depth. Real depth, it's private.
Mm-hmm.
Based on your culture, your religion, how do you want your life to be? Now, at this point, I've saved some families who realized they didn't want to be ranching. They were ranching because the family expected them to. And it would have led in bankruptcy and divorce. So it saved them right there. So I'd just get you to discuss that. When you had decided pretty firmly, we might take half a day doing it and talking about it. And then I would say, okay, if that's what you want from this land that you own and you lease, what will this land have to look like hundreds of years for your descendants to have a life like that? Forget that it's eroding, desertifying, all this stuff. Forget it. Your private land and the BLM, forget that. What will it have to look like? Not what you'd like it to look like. Have to. And we would describe it under 4 processes. How will the water have to cycle? Will it be an effective water cycle or non-effective? Floods and droughts or water absorbed into the soil? How will the solar energy have to flow through the whole biological life? Because without solar energy, there can be no stable economy in the world. And it starts with agriculture. Okay, so how will that have to flow? Maximum flow, minimum, etc. How would biological community dynamics have to be? Monocultures, simplicity, instability, or complex communities? We would not mention species. You cannot manage species. We would just mention process. So we go through 4 processes like that and describe them hundreds of years from now. All right, now I would finally say to you, okay, Justin, you and your family, you're going to have to deal with government agencies, you're going to have to borrow money, you're going to have to sell products. How do you want all the people that you are dependent upon to treat you? You want them to flock to you because they totally trust you? You want them to then come halfway around the world to help you if you're in trouble? You'll probably say yes. Okay. You're never judged by your words, your brand, your marketing. You're judged by your behavior. So I'd say to you and your family, how are you going to have to be for me to be totally loyal to you, to support you? Mm-hmm. And you will describe that, not just a meaningless string of values. What will your attitude have to be? Your integrity? Are there degrees of honesty? Or is it like pregnancy? Can you be a little bit pregnant? We talk about this deep stuff. It's yours. It's not for public. But when you've got it and you've decided how your family you want it to be, that should mean more to you than anything in life. If you say, no, my children mean more, they should have been in it. If you say my religion should mean more, no, it should have been in it. You cannot escape it. Mm-hmm. Now you have a context. And then I would say, well, now let's look at your lunch. How are you going to meet your needs? What are your problems? And you'd start using past experience, all the usual stuff. You'd start making decisions. And amongst that, you'd be using most of the stuff that's already available. Thousands of things are available from good farmers, good ranchers, good universities. There's no shortage of information. You start using that. But as you get close to a decision, you just check that it's in line with what you want. That's basically,
Yeah.
and it's easier to just get you doing it than to explain it.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this again. I said it previously is I don't think there's a lot of people saying and talking about holistic management. This is not what they're talking about. And it's getting back to, like you say, the gurus, the marketing elements that are being in our industry. And while it might be doing some element of help or pushing some management that's the right direction, it's not totally in line with what you're talking about here. And so I recognize that. There's another phrase.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, you bet. Mm-hmm.
To bear out what you're saying, many years ago, 40 years ago, I was going to address a big meeting of ranchers and Forest Service and so on people in Arizona. Just before I went up on the front stage, Tommy Martin, who was on our staff at the time, said to me, by the way, Allan, the Forest Service has just announced there'll be no more HRM, which is what they called it then. There'll be no more HM, as you call it now, until the Forest Service trials have proven right. And I said, thanks for the advice. And I got up on the platform to talk to all those ranchers and Forest Service people and BLM. And I said, by the way, I've just been given this information. And I said, I agree with the Forest Service. I said, all HM should be banned. And people were shocked. And I said, I can see the shock on your faces. Let me explain. I said, HM or holistic management, what does it mean in the public eye? What does it mean in your minds? What does it mean in the Forest Service minds? It means some grazing system, and they can do tests on it and prove it or disprove it. I said, it's a management process. It's a planning process of grazing. You can never subject it to experimental testing. Every scientist knows that. For some reasons, academics don't. And I said, so I agree with the Forest Service, it should be banned. Now I said, can I just rephrase it? I said, if you were to go be a rancher with a small holding but a big Forest Service allotment, if you were to go to the Forest Service and say, I want to manage holistically, that very forester would probably say, what the hell do you mean? And you'd say, what I said to you earlier, I'm going to get together with my farm, do this, and because you're part of my resource base, I'm going to involve you in it, deciding what you want, what the Forest Service wants, etc. And then I'm going to open my mind to all science and start to proactively manage that way. And I said, the Forest Service person would agree with you. I said, there isn't a government in the world that could ban that. Not a government in the world could ban that. But as long as you talk holistic management and people think management system, yes, a government should ban it.
We're going to jump in here and take a break. And coming up, the question I ask Allan is, does the idea of running our ranch like a business conflict with holistic management? We'll get into that coming up after the break. This segment today brought to you by the American Gelbvieh Association.
Capitalize on crossbreeding with Gelbvieh and Balancer bulls. Raise replacement females with added fertility, increased longevity, and greater productivity. Gelbvieh and Balancer influenced females wean more pounds of calf per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer influenced cattle offer increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and have excellent carcass merit. Balancers add the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. Make your crossbreeding count with Gelbvieh and Balancer genetics.
Support your cattle's health and productivity with Vigortone minerals. Since 1912, Vigortone has been a trusted name in animal nutrition. Our revitalized product line offers targeted nutrition for every stage of production and every region. Vigortone delivers consistent performance and simplifies your mineral decisions. Wherever you are, Vigortone works. Visit Vigortone.com to learn more.
Well, as we head into this last part of winter, this weather, as we'll hear from meteorologist Don Day, continues to be kind of pretty tough weather for a lot of folks all across the country. And for folks that have calved, are calving, going to be calving, Well, I tell you, the nutrition of these mother cows are going to be ever so important, especially as they try to handle some of the severe weather situations that we have. And if you really want to improve your herd's health and simplify your feeding routine, have you thought about using Smart Lick low moisture tubs? They can be the answer to that. They're self-fed, weather resistant, which is a big deal with this kind of weather we're going to be having, and they're also very convenient. Smart Lick is packed with everything needed to balance the diet, support weight gain, and improve productivity. We want to get those cows back in shape to rebreed for this next year. And with Smart Lick, it's not just another tub, it's a dependable way to get results. If you want to find out where you can find your local dealer, go to their website at smartlick.com. Again, that's smartlic.com. Well, as we get back into our conversation with Allan Savory, my question to him was, as we talk about what he sees holistic management is, my question is, does it coincide with the idea of running our ranch like a business?
It's right in alignment. Now, how do you run it as a business? Well, you can manage it with all your management being reductionist, running your business, meeting your needs, desires, solving problems, basing all of your decisions on research results, past experience, laws, regulations. Exactly, you can do that. The chances are, like most ranches, you'll end up with environmental criticism, agency criticism, a failing industry that is dying. Western ranching culture is wonderful. I love it. And I'm a late arriver in America. I love it. But it's a dying industry. As I mentioned at the Cowboy Poets Association many years ago, I said, your whole industry is going to be remembered in cowboy poetry, and athletes paid professional prices for riding in rodeos. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can run your ranch as a business, and I can tell you where it's going to go. Now, you can run it as a business and say, now, running this business, first thing I've got to do is finance my family. In other words, have a highly profitable business, and I'm going to do it by managing holistically. And when you're looking at managing it holistically like that, if you look at the gurus and everybody else, one of the first things they do is say, you've got to do mob grazing, intensive grazing, you've got to put in fencing. Well, you've just done the wrong thing. That's reductionist management. Because if you're overcapitalized, which is the case of every single ranch that I've ever visited, if you're doing that and you've just added more money to fencing when you're overcapitalized, that's economically unsound. Now, if you're managing holistically, you look at that decision and say, well, I'm horribly understocked. Mm-hmm. As is every ranch. The whole of American rangelands, horribly understocked, horrifically. And you say, first thing I need is more cattle. Oh, hell, I haven't got the money to buy the cattle. Okay, let's creatively think. Oh, I've got some business people in town that might like to run some cattle on my ranch and pay me the grazing fee. So I'd own some cattle and I'd have another 100 cattle bringing in income. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is holistic financial planning. And then from that, you'll be saying, okay, now how am I going to run those animals? They're the only thing in the world that can stop my land degrading. Do it economically and lastingly. How am I going to do it? I can do mob grazing, intensive grazing, adaptive management grazing, all the 15, 20 things that develop from my work. They will all fail in the end, as they've done for 10,000 years. Or I could go back to the origin and look at what does holistic plan grazing mean? Oh, it means a simple planning process that can be taught in a day and was developed from 1,000 years of immediate battlefield conditions. And even critical people, 2,000, could not work out how to make it fail. Let me just use that. I can learn it. Savory Institute has all the resources you need to help you provide training. We have hubs all over the world to try and help people help themselves and provide training. You can learn that in a day, literally. I've trained school leaders to do it in a day. And that's what Dirk Steiner and co. studied, and they averaged 300% more profit. So you see, it's very, very simple, straightforward, if you stop all the people confusing it. Mm-hmm. If I could use the Wright brothers as an analogy, we didn't know how to fly for 10,000 years. Hundreds of men died trying. On a given day, the Wright brothers flew. we could release human creativity, and within 70 years, we were on the moon. Now, for 10,000 years, we didn't know what was causing desertification. We discovered in 1965. We could have been on the moon by now, but we hadn't. Now, what was the difference? When the Wright brothers flew, thousands of people, egos, creativity, all the human stuff we are, developed thousands of models of planes, but all of them that did not have the principles of a power source, a curved wing, ailerons, rudder, crashed and didn't mislead the public. All the ones that had the principles went on, and we were on the moon in 70 years. Unfortunately, when we developed holistic planned grazing and management, we had no way of making people stick to those principles. So now it's becoming all things to all people.
Mm-hmm. We find a way to market elements of a good idea, of a good basis, and we find that in our society, don't we, Allan, where they market that, and as you said, the gurus, the marketing specialists, all those kinds of things, they take the innocence of an idea and they pollute it, don't they?
And unfortunately, America is a country with more people than most who do that.
We're going to pause here and take a break. When we return, it'll be our final and concluding comments in my conversation with Allan Savory. This segment today brought to you by Ambrook, and I encourage you to go back and listen to 2 episodes ago. It was part 1 of our conversation with Allan Savory, but later on in that program, I had the opportunity to visit with Mackenzie Burnett, who's the CEO and co-founder of Ambrook. It's an accounting software that's really targeted for the ag industry in mind. As we know, it's important for us to know what an enterprise is costing us, what the kind of revenue that it's generating in addition to its cost, having that P&L per enterprise, maybe you want to narrow it down to even per location. You can do that. And of course, knowing just what our overheads are going to be, that's part of it. But also the idea was just getting down to reducing labor, being able to do that through a mobile app with Ambrooks and not having to keep a shoebox full of receipts or a file folder, or maybe they're next to your nightstand or in the glove box, your pickup, whatever that might be. The ability to scan those receipts, get that information in right from your phone, making it very, very simple. And one of the things too, with it being tax season right now, it comes right out of the box, ready to use with Schedule F and Schedule C, making tax season very simple. So if you want to find out more information, I encourage you to go to their website. It's a USA company. Their folks are right here in the United States. You can go to ambrook.com, and if you do /ranch, again, it's ambrook.com/ranch, you can get a 30-day free trial courtesy of all of us here at Workin' Ranch.
With rising feed costs and an increased focus on sustainability within the beef industry, feed efficiency is more than a buzzword. It's rapidly becoming a battle cry in an industry challenged to do more with less. By incorporating today's Limousine and Limflex genetics into your planned crossbreeding program, you can capitalize on the breed's inherent feed efficiency advantage and moderate cow size, while still banking the premiums paid for high-quality, high-yielding carcasses. That's 2 ways to profit instead of 1. Let Limousine and Limflex deliver dollars to your bottom line. Limousine today, profit tomorrow.
Well, Allan, my word, a lot to think about. I think we've also left a lot of unanswered questions that people would want to find out more information on, which is good because we're not going to get through everything, and I'm okay with that. But as we start to wrap up our conversation here, just some final comments from you.
We've covered 2 new concepts: managing holistic plan grazing, and how essential that is to use livestock in reverse. These are new concepts in the world, and you cannot cover them in a discussion like this. You've done amazingly well. So I would encourage you to think about it, talk about it with listeners, and interview me as many times as you like. Break it down as much as you like. It's too important for the survival of humanity now, and I mean it. And if any of the listeners, any scientist anywhere can explain to you and me and others where I'm wrong, either logic or science, I'll be the first to say I screwed up, like when I did with the elephants. It's not about my damned ego or my legacy. It's about trying to save humanity.
Mm-hmm. Very good. That's a good way to end. And I think our society now we have so many resources, Allan, at our fingertips that we can take what we've talked about here today for the next steps for somebody that's wanting to find out more. Just a couple next steps real quick.
You know, when banks go haywire, you have a congressional testimony. When you have COVID, you have a congressional testimony. Congress has evidence, etc. There's nothing to stop congressmen interviewing me. Mm-hmm. COVID, just take COVID, which has been such a big issue. In 4 months, COVID did more global economic damage than World War II did in 4 years when I was a child. How can a virus do that damage? It can't. What did the damage? That is still going on. The damage was done because every single government, and it would have happened with the present administration as well, developed policy the same way. Mm-hmm. So we could be talking COVID, we could take a simple thing like invasive plants. Since I've been in America, over $1 billion, not $1 million, is spent every single year killing invasive plants, non-native plants. There's no such thing as a non-native plant in the world. That's a bureaucratic term. If your plants have been spreading around the world always, if they arrive before a certain day, they get the green card. If they arrive a week later, they're non-native, they're invasive. It's not science, but we spend $1 billion every year on that, and we're trying to save money. The new administration needs to look at that. Mm-hmm. We haven't killed a single weed in a single state. In the 40-odd years I've been here, we've poisoned the rivers, poisoned the underground water, bankrupted farmers, bankrupted ranchers, and we just keep doing it. So Congress could be inquiring into these things, but they're not.
Yeah. Well, Allan, I know the Savory Institute is a mechanism that you have available for folks to continue to expand their education and practice and utilizing this. From a resource standpoint, beyond that, what would you recommend? I mean, what kind of literature did you have available as well that folks can get into? I mean, because some of the stuff they need to kind of do on their own. It's one thing, not everybody gets the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with you like I am here today, but at the same time, they need to start a process. What would you recommend?
Well, the Savory Institute, I didn't want my name used with it. It was formed by young people along with me, and I finally agreed to that name. So the younger people are running it today. They're very, very competent. They're very good. I'm like an old horse out pasture, more or less. So just contact them. They've got about 50 hubs around the world, many in America, and many more can form. And these are basically self-managing groups of people getting together who've got some land base because they're concentrating on the desertification issue first and just get associated with it. Now they've got a mess of material, from audio material to self-training to coaching. Just start exploring it. Everything is available. People only have to be committed to helping their families.
Very good. And I think we'll end it right there, Allan. I do thank you for taking the time, and I appreciate that openness on your side. Very interesting conversation with you. I've enjoyed it. It's been very good for me on so many levels beyond just ranching. And maybe that's really the basis. Isn't about the holistic concept of it, right? So beyond that, I appreciate you being here today on the program.
Well, thank you, Justin. I've really appreciated you too.
And that wraps up our conversation with Allan Savory here today, as we've been able to share with you over the last 3 episodes the entirety of that interview. And if you missed one of those, I encourage you to go back and listen to those. And if you do have questions on holistic management, then of course I would point you towards the Savory Institute for that as well. I do thank Allan for joining us here on the program. I think some of the conversations that we had really opened my eyes to thinking definitely beyond just the here and the now, and thinking beyond and in the future, and understanding how we as ranchers must be part of the solution. I think that's something that we can all agree on, that we as ranchers must be part of the solution, and that livestock are not the problem for our world, that they absolutely can be part of the solution. We'll be back after this.
Calving season is a favorite time of year, but along with that special time are dangers, extra stress, and increased labor. Safety Zone calf catchers are all about safety and making processing new calves easier. Designed for ATVs or UTVs, one person can do the job and never be threatened by the protective mother cow. Make this and every calving season safer and easier with a Safety Zone calf catcher. Watch videos and customer testimonials or order yours today at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914. Affordable and made in the USA. Make your upcoming and all future calving seasons safer, easier, and stress-free. Durable and designed to work anywhere you can drive your ATV or UTV. Order online at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914 today.
Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Joining me now is Dan Leo, owner of Safety Zone Calf Catcher. Dan, good to have you here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Well, thanks, Justin. It's good to be here.
Well, it's a fascinating product that we're going to be talking about here today. And as you and I were talking about before we went on air several years ago, of course, Working Ranch Magazine posted a video with the Safety Zone Calf Catcher, and it just absolutely went viral, didn't it?
Yeah, like within 5 or 6 days, I forget the exact number, but I think it hit like 5 or 6 million views on a Facebook post that they did. And quite honestly, we wasn't ready at that time to handle all the business that came our way, but it was a great thing.
Well, and I think because of that, I think it also really exploited or even really saw what the need was in the market, that people thought this, what you could do. And when we're going to get into it, it's a product that can be attached to a four-wheeler or a side-by-side where you can get in and work your calf. And I think it really probably the reason it went so viral is because people are thinking, man, I wish there was something out there that could do this. And here it was.
That's exactly right. Our mother cows in this industry, we want them to take care of their calves. We want them to be protective. And the last thing we want is a cow to have a calf and just wander off and not take care of it. But that instinctive nature she's got sometimes can get a little bit overboard. And there's been a lot of issues around the country where people have gotten in trouble, and some of them big trouble and getting hurt, or it takes extra help to process these calves. And the calf catcher has really met a need.
So just real briefly, because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about what the product can do initially, but at the same time, when did this start?
About 14 years ago is when we really started building the calf catcher. And actually the original prototype, we've got in our operation today that we've run, probably 7,000, 8,000 calves through ourselves. And, we've updated it a little bit since the beginning, but, we started out, basically, we had neighbors that wanted them, and then pretty soon their neighbors wanted them, and then our marketing kind of started stretching a little bit throughout the country. And, we would have never imagined 13, 14 years ago that we'd have this calf catcher in countries basically all over the world.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into it. And I know we are on radio here, and the fact that we're going to take some explanation, as I had mentioned before, it is a very durable metal USA-built apparatus that attaches to either of course, back in those days, we saw a lot more four-wheelers, so I think that was probably where things started, but now we're seeing a lot more side-by-sides. And explain kind of what it is, what it does, and what all can be done with it.
Okay, so the calf catcher itself is designed, of course, like you said, to fit on the left-hand side of an ATV or a UTV. We actually build about half and half today to fit those both those situations. And you open up the front gate, and you essentially drive over the calf. If it's a brand new calf, you just drive over him, shut the gate. You step into the calf catcher cage. The cow's on the outside. You set the calf in the calf holder compartment to the back. The calf is back there where the cow can see and smell that calf. The mother cow doesn't get near as upset as she would if you're over the top of him or roping the calf or trying to do things that typically like have been done over the years. And at all times, the operator is inside a cage, and he's safe. Mm-hmm. And so then he can take his time or go as fast as he wants, tagging the calf, banding the calf, vaccinating, branding. We have some people do that in the cage itself. And then when they're done, they're again still inside the cage. They reach through and open up a handle on the back corner of the calf catcher. The calf drops out the backside and walks away with his mother if you need to pair them out.
Those cows will virtually follow you about anywhere. But the thing that's neat about watching the behavior of the mother cow, she's just a lot more calmer and more at peace when you're not wrestling that calf on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Dan, you talked about a calf, newborn calf, being able to drive over the top of it. But a calf, as we know, I mean, a calf gets a couple days on them. They're not going to just always just be laying on the ground. Now, you might be able to do that. But the ability to do this even with the calf that's active, just in watching the video on this, you can do that with these calves that are a little more active as well.
Oh, yeah. We actually encourage people when they first get a calf catcher to process those brand new calves that aren't real mobile. But after people have a calf catcher in use and they get some experience with it, they can catch calves that are a month or 2 months old. Mm-hmm. We've had situations where people have used them to catch calves in the middle of summer, calves that are 3 and 4 months old have got pink eye.
Yeah.
And so, you just need to be a little more aggressive on how you go about it. But the thing about it is, it's nice, is once you catch that calf, you're away from that cow, you can handle the calf, and that calf holder compartment on the back end is just really important because it positions that calf where you can take care of it. You're not fighting the calf, and it just makes everything go easier and smoother.
Okay, let's talk about the compartment of that where you put the calf up into, because there's some options with that. It's kind of set up sort of a squeeze type format in some way, shape, but there's also the element we can add into it, maybe a set of scales if you wanted to, but just talk about that part of it there.
Well, yeah. So the calf holder compartment, essentially, there's a door that folds down. The calves that are pretty mobile and on their feet, a lot of times those calves will just jump right up on that door. You raise it up. There's 2 bungee straps that hold it in place, and essentially you go to work. If you need to weigh your calves, which we have a lot of customers today, and not just purebred people, a lot of commercial cattlemen want to know what the birth weights of them calves are. We've got 2 different scale options that people can get. It's an aluminum platform. It's really durable. It can handle all kinds of weather, environmental situations. And those calves stand on there. You get a really, really accurate weight. And so, that's a component that's really been pretty strong in our sales, for probably 10, 12 years. Mm-hmm. And then we also have a tow hitch option for people that, let's say that they're calving in different areas that are a distance away and they're concerned about going down the road. It doesn't take but just a minute, and so you can switch it around, slide the tongue in the front of it, hook it on the back, and you're gone.
Sure.
And one of the things that I want to touch on here too is, there's a lot of people in the industry have, more than one ATV or UTV or whatever. So they'll just leave a calf catcher on during calving season. But for the people that only have one unit, taking these off and putting them back on only takes a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the most. There's ball couplers on the front. There's a stabilizer arm that holds it in place. It's got a big wing nut. So if you got a big mitten on and during the winter time, you can loosen it, you can drive away from it, you can back into it, hook it up, and you're ready to go again.
Now, Dan, I might also add too, and I think this is sort of a given, and the fact that this thing is mobile is, say you got a sick calf too, and you want to get it into the barn. That's something I see with it being pretty useful as well, because you can leave it in the compartment there where it's held up there, and the mother can also see it, she can smell it as you tow it into the barn.
Yeah, it's got a lot of advantages there, whether it's a sick calf or a cold calf, or like in our operation, just last night we had a set of twins. Mm-hmm. And so we just put both twins in the back end. We headed for the barn. We got them in there, got them all mothered up, got colostrum in the calves. But it's a really handy piece. And of course, a lot of people pair out. They'll calve in one area, yeah, and they'll pair out. Those cows will virtually follow them about anywhere.
Okay, Dan, one of the things that I think is important for people to know is go to the website. It's Safety Zone Calf Catchers, safetyzonecalfcatchers.com, because on that, not only are you going to see video, but my word, I mean, you've got these things all over the world, from Australia to Canada to all places, all corners of the United States as well. If they go to the website, you're going to get a pretty good idea what this does, how it works and functions, as well as all the different things and components that you can add to it.
Yeah, that's right. We've always felt from day one, we can tell people how good it works and this type of thing, but our customers that have submitted these testimonials, we probably got over 1,000 of them. We rotate through our website from different parts of the world. We've sold these, throughout North America and Europe, South America, into Australia and New Zealand. And, we let our customers tell their story. And And one of the common things that you'll see and hear is number one, it allows people to be safe, it allows people to be stress-free. It keeps the cow from being stressed out, and it just makes it so people can be in business a lot longer if they want to be in business a longer period of time, which, I'm 77 years old myself, and I'm not interested in quitting.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people like me that either don't know how to quit or don't want to quit or don't have help around to help them. And whether it's a man or woman or some youngster that can old enough to drive a four-wheeler or UTV, you can tag calves on the ranch. You don't have to be worried about that protected cow.
All right. Well, Dan, I know, as I said before, made right here in America as well.
Yep. We make them in South Central Nebraska. We ship them by LTL carriers all over the country. We've got really competitive pricing. So, in this day and age, what the calf catcher costs versus what cattle are worth, and let alone what doctor bills can be, it's a really, really good investment. And one of the things that we build these ourselves with our own labor and our own shop. We're on top of quality control. We powder coat them so they stay looking good a long period of time. And they're durable. They're designed to go over any kind of environment that you'd want to put them in. If you can basically drive your four-wheeler or your UTV over, whether it be corn rows or down through gullies or whatever, the calf catcher will go there too.
You bet. Well, that answered another question I had on my sheet here, what you just said there. So very good. Dan, did we miss anything? We get everything covered?
No, I think we really covered it well. And again, we would encourage people to watch the video on our website, read those testimonials. If they have any questions, myself or my son, who handles a lot of our sales, can answer any questions and help you out. It's a product that helps people stay in business. It helps people stay safe. It saves labor, and it's designed to last generations. Like, we've got one retired engineer in Texas that bought one of these, and he called me one day and he said, Dan, I got to tell you, my kids' grandkids will still be using this the way you build them.
Well, that's good. That's what we want. That's what we're gonna make the investments. So, Dan, very good. Again, the website, folks, is Safety Zone Calf Catchers with an S in the end there. SafetyZoneCalfCatchers.com. Phone number, if you'd like to get a hold of them that way, it's 877-505-0914. Dan, very good, very fascinating product there. I think, as you said, it went viral years ago because it was something that people just like, oh, that's what I've been needing all along.
Yeah. No, our customers tell the story best, and calving time is one of the best times of the year in this industry, and it just makes it safer and easier and a lot more enjoyable.
You bet. Well, Dan, thanks for joining us here today on the program.
Yep. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Dan Leo, owner of Safety Zone Calf Catchers, joining us here today on the program. If you want more information, that is the website, just like I read it off there, SafetyZoneCalfCatchers.com. You can go there, watch the videos, read the testimonials, find contact information should you have more questions about that product. The Captain, Tim O'Byrne, standing by with this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents, and we'll hear from meteorologist Don Day about that long-term weather forecast. Here's the hint, Burr. We'll be back after this.
Fascinated by our wild weather? Now you can learn, appreciate, and understand the weather in your own backyard with the new Tropo Rain Gauge. Having achieved the highest rating of any product reviewed by the WeatherStationExperts.com, the Tropo boasts rugged durability, impeccable accuracy, and precision to the 100th of an inch. Visit MeasureRain.com to order a Tropo today and use code RAINDAY. That's RAINDAY for free shipping and 10% off. Go to MeasureRain.com.
Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody out there in Working Ranch Radioland. Boy, coming home and thinking about all the things that we saw at CattleCon 25 in San Antonio. Great. That trade show is amazing. Great booths, great presentations, excellent music down there, too. In the afternoon, they kind of kick out a little bit of a party atmosphere, kind of some bands playing really good music. And got a chance to meet with so many cool people. One of them stopped by our booth, Haleakala Sakata from the Big Island in Hawaii. And we visited for quite a while talking about her lowline cattle, Hawaii Lowline Cattle Company, locally raised 100% grass-fed beef. I got to tell you, we're going to do a story on them here and then down the road, maybe in the summertime. And just really cool how they created a little niche for themselves. Really good, high-quality cattle, a little bit smaller of a ribeye. And they have a clientele that's just nearby, basically the neighbors. So it's a very interesting model. She was a very, very astute cattle woman. And they incorporated some of the old ways in there too, which I think I'm going to enjoy drilling down deep into some of the history of Hawaii and the cattle business there. And I'll tell you what, one of the coolest things I actually saw, it rolled out for the first time last year, ENVU, ENVU, Range and Pasture. It's a satellite program that can map your ranch, all the different fields, and then tell you what kind of foliage you have in there and what state it's in. They did a bunch of upgrades to that and rolled out the second one here at CattleCon 25. I'll tell you what, guys, ENVU, you got to check it out. It is that's technology. I've been in this business coming on 48 years now, and embryo transfer I started working in that environment when I was just a young lad there helping to feed the cattle in the embryo transfer facility. That was big time technology, but I got to tell you, this strategic satellite range mapping, it's going to be, that's the thing of the future. You got to check it out. Justin, what did you find really interesting at the show? You had some good interviews there and met a lot of cool people and had some fun too. So what did you think was interesting? Back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks, Captain. Yeah, boy, I tell you what, the trade show is amazing to see all of that stuff. In fact, I've had people ask me, they say, so what did you see down there? It was pretty cool. And I said, well, there was a lot of things. In fact, I felt like really I didn't get to see everything I wanted to, but nevertheless, you're right. I think in response to your question, what did I see down there, but also in response to the topic or the talking about ENVU, I think that warrants a show where we could look at where that technology is headed, what it's going to be doing in our industry. I know for me, I'm still fascinated by some of how we can integrate more of the remote technology into our industry that reduces labor. That to me is a big deal for me. It's a big deal for my neighbors and other folks. I think in the ranching industry is how we can reduce labor costs, overhead costs is big. And so any of that kind of stuff, we've done programs here on virtual fencing. I think that technology continues to evolve, and I want to do more in looking at that. There's several companies out there that do that. And as we continue to go, it becomes more affordable. And as it becomes more affordable, it really is a viable option to look at from a management standpoint. So really was very interesting to see a lot of the different types of things at this year's trade show in amongst of all the other demonstrations that took place. And always enjoy listening to Cattle Facts and what they're going to be doing with that. And as I said it earlier on in the program, Clint Berry will be joining us next week as we talk about what these projections look like. So I'm looking forward to sharing that conversation with you all as well. Well, turning now, let's take a look at our long-term weather. Standing by is meteorologist Don Day. And Don, we can kind of sum up the weather forecast with Burr.
Boy, isn't that right? Yeah, it's been as cold as it's been in a few winters, at least persistently cold, especially for folks in the northern Rockies and the northern plains, and for folks in south central Canada. Boy, really since after the 1st of January, it's been extremely cold in those areas, and we've seen it expand. I mean, we had 35 degrees below zero earlier in International Falls, Minnesota. So that harkens back to some of the colder winters of the past, for sure.
Yeah. So when we look ahead, I know we've still got, we're going to, a little bit of a short term here because this coming week, it's still extending into this cold. You're saying potentially some of the coldest weather maybe we've seen all winter.
Yeah. What we're going to see is there's still a pocket of very intense Arctic air that's stretching across the northern tier of the U.S. and into Canada. And there's going to be one more push south of this big Arctic air mass before it becomes diffuse and head on into the other side of the globe. So we're going to have another week or so to where temperatures across the northern tier of the U.S. will be bitterly cold. We could see minus 40s as far south as maybe northern Nebraska. I could see it that cold. And we could see sub-zero temperatures get all the way down into Kansas, maybe even Oklahoma, and the abnormally cold air will spill all the way down deep into the heart of Texas and spread into the Corn Belt, spread into the Great Lakes. So this is going to be another Arctic outbreak rivaling what we had in that one outbreak in January. Now, I do think that we'll see relief right at the end of February. And usually once you get out of February into early March, having these Arctic outbreaks of this intensity usually are hard to get. So hopefully this will be the last, but it's going to be tough for some folks, as it's going to be severely cold for another week.
So as we look out beyond that, you had mentioned that end of February, we could see this break, may not see the extreme cold that we've seen here again, we hope, this winter. So as we look into end of February and into March, what are you seeing there as far as that weather that's starting to shift? Because we do know we're going to start to see is with more daylight minutes that are happening and more sunshine, that it's going to eventually change that pattern a bit.
Yeah, well, most of the nation should, for the last, let's say, 5 days of February, see relief from the cold, really coast to coast. But think of it as Mother Nature just kind of resetting it, so to speak, kind of hitting reset on your video game console to start the new game. And the new game will be March. And what we see developing in March is the tendency for it to be colder than normal. Now, do I see it as severely cold? No. But we see a very active pattern developing in the Pacific after the 1st of March that I think is going to lead to coast some stormy March weather. So while we do have this break at the end of February, I think March is more likely to start like a lion and maybe end as a lion for a lot of the U.S. And the reason we say that, we have some fundamental things on a large scale. The La Nina that's continuing to weaken, and now it's weakening quite rapidly. That is an argument for a colder, stormy March. We also have another stratospheric warming event right at the beginning of March, which tends to keep a stormy pattern going across North America. And we also have a lot of snow cover building up. That's been building up over southern Canada and the northern interior of the U.S., and that's not going to melt away in a hurry, and that can affect things. That snow field can affect temperatures well into early March, and when you have that colder air up north available to come south as it does get warmer in the southern latitudes, well, that adds fuel to the fire, so to speak. So March is likely going to be a wild ride.
All right. Well, as I have emailed you or texted you from time to time, we had fog this morning, or we have fog coming up, and I showed a lot of fog events for us in March, which would indicate kind of what you're talking about is a pretty active weather pattern.
That's right. Keeping track of those fog days, I think, is important. So your fog days do sync up with what I'm seeing.
Well, good. Don, thanks for joining us here this morning, and I look forward to talking to you next week after we've been through this extreme cold and hearing maybe what that little warmer forecast could look like for a few days here before we jump into March.
That is correct. I hope we have some better news to pass along with temperature, that's for sure.
All right. Thanks, Don. And you can catch meteorologist Don Day each and every morning through his daily video podcast. If you want to stay up to speed with what's going on with this cold spell and what the rest of this spring is going to look like, tune in each and every morning to his daily video podcast at dayweather.com is the link to his YouTube channel. On the next episode, Clint Berry joining us to talk about the 2025 Cattle Outlook. The Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. Thanks for joining us. I'm Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.